I have a lot of favorite musicians. Some of my, well, as far as producers, Quincy Jones is like my idol. He is one person that commands excellence. And what I like about Quincy Jones is that he surrounds himself with the best musicians in the world. So all of his projects are top notch. As far as bass players, one of my favorite bass players definitely and biggest influence was Mr. James Jamerson from Motown, because he played on so many hit records. And growing up as a kid in Detroit and hearing the Motown sound all the time, I actually had a chance to get lessons and study with some of the Funk brothers. Earl Van Dyke was one of my teachers at school, and also Mr. Beans Bowles, who was the musical director for the Motown Review. So it's funny that now I'm actually reduplicating what Beans did, you know, in the 60s with Motown. Another favorite bass player of mine, of course, is Marcus Miller. I love Marcus's tone on bass. Nathan East is another big-time favorite of mine. And I'm also a big fan of Bootsy Collins. Growing up in Detroit, Parliament Funkadelic P-Funk Labs was based in Detroit, Michigan at a studio called United Sound Labs. So as a kid, me and a couple of my friends, we would hang out in the parking lot and watch Bootsy Collins and George Clinton and Roger Troutman and all those guys coming in and out of the studio. So one day, one of the guys from P-Funk was like, yeah, you guys want to come in? So we actually had a chance to actually come into the studio and just kind of sit in and watch some of the sessions go down and listen to the band play and just kind of hang out. And I actually got to become really good friends with several members of Parliament Funkadelic. So that was very influential for me learning funk. I had a chance to meet Mr. Bernie Worrell, and he, to me, is the godfather of synthesizer bass. Like, he was one of the first people that brought the synthesizer as the bass instrument and played the bottom line on the synthesizer. Also along with Greg Fillinganes, who's also another Detroiter, who played keyboards and bass synthesizer on all of the Michael Jackson records. Another big influence of mine was Stevie Wonder as far as playing bass synthesizer. And his musical director was Mr. Nate Watts, another fellow Detroiter. Nate was the first person I saw playing keyboard bass and electric bass at the same time. And that kind of really made me want to get into that more, playing synth bass. A lot of records had started coming out, big records like Kashif produced records that had a lot of heavy key bass and not as much as the bass guitar. So that made me really lean towards perfecting my craft as a synthesizer player, programming bass sounds, and playing the bass lines on keyboards as well as on bass guitar. One of my first gigs with the Winans, I actually wound up recording 2 records with them where I played synthesizer bass on the record and on the live tour, as well as a Winans Live at Carnegie Hall record. I played synthesizer bass and electric bass. Another great influence of mine was Mr. Teddy Riley, because Teddy showed me so much about just programming, sounding big, playing big, and that's kind of what I really want to emphasize here is, as a bass player, that you playing keyboard bass is almost a necessity now. It's like you have to be able to do them both just as well, synthesizer bass, programming, as well as playing electric bass and acoustic bass and upright bass. Well, actually, I like the Born This Way Foundation, which is Lady Gaga's foundation, where she's giving money, helping people and helping kids in the community. Also, in the city of Detroit, you know, they just start taking music out of the public schools. Music was so important in my career in the public schools because that's where I actually got a chance to actually play with other musicians and learn how to read music, learn how to write and compose music on paper other than just by ear, and a chance to play orchestra music as well and classical. So I would like to give back to the public schools and encourage the kids out here that music is a real job. As a kid, a lot of people say, well, you know, you need to get a real job, but music is the real job now. And it's a very adventurous field to get into, because not only do you learn a lot, but you get to travel. I traveled around the whole world maybe 3 or 4 times now to like every country in the world. And it's been so amazing just meeting different peoples, different countries, experimenting with the culture and the food, and learning different languages. So that's been a great plus for me. But it all started in Detroit public schools.